Is this real life?
Yes, this is real life.
I feel crazy.
It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn and everyone, telling me they loved me.
The courtroom doors parted like a curtain on a stage set for scandal, and as Hailey Bieber stepped through, a suffocating silence swallowed every whisper, every rustle, every breath, replaced only by the sharp, deliberate echo of her heels striking the marble floor, each step a countdown to a truth that could topple an empire. No cameras dared flash. No phones buzzed. The room was a vacuum, charged with the weight of a secret too heavy to stay buried. All eyes followed her to the witness stand, her face a mask of calm, almost cold, but her fingers, clutching each other with a subtle tremor, betrayed a storm simmering beneath. Sean Diddy Combs sat rigid at the defense table, his jaw locked, his gaze fixed forward, avoiding her presence as if he could will her words away. He didn't need to look. He knew exactly why she was there, and the air crackled with the unspoken question. What truth was Hailey about to unleash? As she adjusted the microphone with deliberate care, her voice sliced through the stillness, sharp and unyielding. I didn't come here for drama. I came because silence protects the wrong people, and I've been silent too long. The room froze, every heart pounding, every ear straining to catch the story she was about to unravel, a story that promised to peel back the glittering facade of fame and expose the shadows beneath. Want to know what happens when the music stops and the truth takes the stage? Subscribe now to stay locked into every twist of this unfolding saga. Hailey's words landed like a spark in a powder keg, igniting a tension that rippled through the courtroom. The judge leaned forward slightly, his calm demeanor betrayed by a flicker of anticipation, as if he too sensed the gravity of what was coming. Diddy's lawyers shifted in their seats, their pens hovering over legal pads, while the jurors, ordinary people thrust into an extraordinary moment, sat wide-eyed, their faces a mix of curiosity and dread. Hailey, barely 20 when her story began, had been drawn into Diddy's orbit by a web of trusted connections, industry insiders who promised her star would rise if she played the game. She was a rising model, her name already whispered in fashion circles. But the invitations to Diddy's exclusive events, parties in Los Angeles, dinners in Miami, private gatherings in New York, came with a weight she couldn't yet name. I trusted the people who told me being around him was good for my brand, she said, her voice steady, but laced with a bitterness honed by years of reflection. They said it was how the industry worked. Say yes to the right rooms and doors would open. Say no, and you'd be left outside, forgotten. Those rooms, Hailey revealed, were never what they seemed. The first time she met Diddy, at a star-studded event in Los Angeles, he was everything the world expected. Charming, magnetic, a king in his domain. But beneath the charisma was something else, a gaze that didn't just see you but evaluated you, weighed you, as if you were an asset to be acquired or a risk to be managed. I didn't feel unsafe at first, she admitted, her eyes scanning the jury, but I felt watched. From the moment I said hello, it was like I was being measured. For what, I didn't know yet. The courtroom hung on her pause, the silence amplifying the weight of her words. That night, she mingled with faces from magazines and music videos, all smiling, all playing their parts. But as the hours passed, she noticed the unspoken rules. Stay close to the power, laugh at the right jokes, never leave early, never ask questions. It felt like a performance, she said, her voice tightening. You weren't there to network. You were there to be seen, to be chosen, or to be dismissed. The rules became clearer with every invitation. A private dinner in Miami, billed as a small, exclusive event, turned out to be anything but. Hailey arrived alone. Phones were confiscated at the door, no explanation given, just a hand outstretched, palm open, demanding compliance. The room was filled with familiar faces, models, influencers, music executives, but no one made eye contact. We were all in our own corners, she said, her fingers fidgeting slightly, waiting for a signal, waiting to be called over. It was like we were auditioning, but for what, no one said. Diddy moved through the space like a conductor, his presence shifting the air, his smile both an invitation and a command. Hailey's voice grew sharper as she recounted a moment that still haunted her, trying to leave early, citing a headache, only to be stopped by one of his staff. They said, "Mr. Combs wants to speak to you before you go." I waited. He came over, looked at me and said, "You know what this is, right?" I didn't answer. He smiled and walked away. The courtroom felt smaller, the air thicker as she continued. That was the first night I realized I wasn't a guest. I was property. He never said it out loud, but he didn't have to. The jury leaned in, their faces a canvas of shock and recognition, as Hailey painted a picture of a world where power wasn't just influence, it was control, wrapped in luxury and opportunity. Invitations to Diddy's events came with a script: smile, stay visible, follow the unspoken cues. Declining wasn't an option, not if you wanted to keep your place in the industry. It was never phrased as a demand, Hailey explained, her tone measured but edged with steel.
They'd say, "Can you make time for a private dinner?"
Or Diddy wants you at this party tonight, but everyone knew what happened if you didn't show up. Your name stopped appearing, on runways and campaigns, on covers. He didn't blacklist you himself. The industry did it for him. She paused, letting the weight of that truth settle. A juror scribbled furiously. Another stared straight ahead as if seeing the machine she described for the first time. One memory stood out, raw and unfiltered, from a night in New York. Hailey had been invited to what she thought was a business meeting. A penthouse, 5 people, no other women. They told me it was about a brand collaboration, she said, her voice dropping, the memory clinging to her words. Instead, I was handed a drink before I could take off my coat. One of the men said, "Relax, you're with family now." But I wasn't with family, I was surrounded. Diddy's presence dominated the room, his questions veering from professional to personal, his compliments laced with something heavier. He leaned in close, she recounted, her eyes fixed on a point beyond the jury, and said, "You've got that look, the look that could change everything." It didn't feel like praise. It felt like a warning. When she tried to leave, he blocked the door with his body, not aggressively but deliberately, his smile never faltering. "I told myself it wasn't that bad," she said, her voice cracking for the first time. "No one touched me, no one hurt me." But that's the lie we tell ourselves, right? If there's no bruise, it doesn't count. The courtroom was a sea of stillness, every listener gripped by the quiet horror of her words. That night in New York wasn't the end. It was a turning point. Hailey began to see the pattern, the way Diddy's world operated like a machine, its gears oiled by silence and complicity. She remembered a girl at a Miami party, vibrant and new to the scene, her laughter lighting up a campaign shoot weeks earlier. At Diddy's event, she was different. Quiet, avoiding eye contact, her spark dimmed. "I saw her later that night," Hailey said, her voice thickening. She was leaving barefoot, mascara running, escorted out by one of his staff. Someone laughed and said, "She got too much Diddy," like it was a joke, like she was a punchline. The jury's faces hardened, some shaking their heads as Hailey continued. "I asked where she was going. They didn't answer. I never saw her again, not at events, not on social media, not anywhere." She reached out once, months later, and received a single message. "Don't ask questions. It's not safe." The girl blocked her after that, and Hailey carried the guilt like a stone, wondering if she could have done more, said more, acted sooner. The pattern repeated, insidious and relentless. In Paris, during Fashion Week, Hailey was invited to a private dinner at a sprawling estate outside the city. A car arrived, no assistant, no security. Just her, alone. "They always said it was exclusive, intimate networking," she said, her eyes narrowing. "But it was never about work. It was about control." The dinner was small. Diddy, 2 men, a high-profile designer and another model, a girl Hailey recognized from a Milan campaign. The staff took their phones, poured wine endlessly, and the conversation shifted from business to something darker. Diddy spoke of beauty as leverage. His eyes locked on Hailey as he said, "You don't need a resume when you have presence." The other girl excused herself, and a man followed her out. One by one, the others left until Hailey was alone with Diddy. "He stood behind me," she said, her hands gripping the witness stand, his hands on my shoulders. He said, "Do you know how many girls would kill to be sitting where you are right now?" I didn't move. I didn't answer. My mind was screaming, "Stay calm, don't escalate." He leaned closer and whispered, "I can make you a star, or I can make sure no one remembers you were ever here." She locked herself in the bathroom for 45 minutes, splashing water on her face, waiting for her body to stop shaking. When she emerged, she made an excuse and left, but the weight of that night clung to her, reshaping how she saw every room, every invitation, every smile. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath as Hailey described the aftermath. She canceled every event tied to Diddy's name, but the consequences were swift and subtle. A major campaign she'd signed was abruptly canceled. Another brand pivoted directions, their excuses polite but hollow. "It didn't make sense until it did," she said, her voice rising with a quiet fury. "He didn't need to touch me to damage me. He didn't scream or threaten violence. He threatened erasure, and in this industry, that's worse." The jury's eyes were glued to her, some nodding slightly, as if piecing together the invisible threads of power she described. Diddy's face remained impassive, but his fingers tapped once, twice on the table, a crack in his armor. Hailey's story wasn't just about her. It was about the others, The women whose names faded from guest lists, whose careers stalled, whose confidence crumbled under the weight of Diddy's influence. She spoke of a young actress who dared to leave an event early, ignoring his calls. Within weeks, her agency dropped her film deal vanished, and her name became a whisper in the industry. It wasn't loud, Hailey said. It was efficient. A message. No one says no to him and stays in the room. Another memory surfaced, raw and painful. A Los Angeles dinner where a girl was led out, barefoot, her face streaked with tears. No one moved, Hailey said, her voice softening with shame. Not one person asked if she was okay, including me. The courtroom's silence was deafening, the weight of her confession settling over the room like dust. I don't know what happened to her, she admitted, but I know what happened to me. And I know what happened to every woman who crossed his path thinking they were walking into opportunity, not a trap. The industry, Hailey explained, was complicit. Agents, managers, brands, they all knew the rules even if they never spoke them. They'd say, "You're lucky he knows your name," she recounted, her tone bitter. And for a while I believed it. I thought I was lucky. But luck was a trap, a glittering cage that kept women smiling through fear, nodding through discomfort, staying silent to stay relevant. He didn't just isolate you in the moment, she said, her eyes locked on the jury. He isolated you after. He made sure you left scared, alone, convincing yourself you imagined it, that you were the problem. The guilt of that silence haunted her, seeping into her career, her marriage, her sense of self. I kept showing up to events, smiling, posing, when I knew the truth behind the curtain, she said. I justified it by telling myself I wasn't involved. But silence is involvement. And he counted on that. Hailey's voice grew stronger, each word a blade carving through the myths that protected men like Diddy. You don't need chains to trap someone, she said, her gaze unwavering. You just need enough fear to keep them still. He mastered that. He wrapped control in luxury, turned opportunity into obligation, and by the time you realized what was happening, it was too late. She paused, letting the truth breathe. The jury was frozen, pens idle, as if the weight of her words had pinned them in place. There's this illusion people love about powerful men, she continued, that they don't need to force anything because they can get whatever they want. But that's the lie. The most powerful ones are the most dangerous, not because they take violently, but because they take quietly, carefully, leaving you wondering if you let it happen. The courtroom felt smaller, the air heavier, as Hailey described the lingering impact. I lost years of my life to this, she said, not because I was locked in a room, but because I carried shame for something I didn't cause. I stopped trusting people. Every business deal, every compliment, every closed-door meeting, I'd ask myself, what do they really want? Because I'd learned what it meant to be in a room where the rules don't protect you. She spoke of telling her husband, Justin Bieber, years later, the fear not of him leaving, but of him seeing her differently, as if she'd been diminished by what she'd endured. I was afraid he'd look at me and see someone broken, she said, her voice softening. But he didn't. He saw someone who survived. And that's when I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. Hailey's testimony wasn't just a recounting of events. It was a dismantling of a system that thrived on silence, fear, and complicity. She spoke of the girls she couldn't save, the ones who disappeared from the industry, their names erased as if they'd never existed. There was one girl, she said, her voice thick with emotion, new, full of life, always laughing. I met her at a shoot, and weeks later, I saw her at one of Diddy's events. She was different, quiet, small, like she was trying to disappear. After that night, her socials went dark. Her name stopped coming up. I reached out and she sent one message. Don't ask questions. It's not safe. Then she was gone. The jury's faces were a mix of sorrow and anger, some wiping their eyes, others clenching their fists. I've carried that guilt for years, Hailey admitted. Not just for what happened to me, but for what I didn't do for the others. The courtroom was a pressure cooker, every word amplifying the stakes. Hailey's voice, once trembling, was now a force, steady and resolute. I'm not here for sympathy, she said, her chin lifting slightly. I'm not here to go viral. I'm here because I watched Diddy take away girls' confidence, careers, and control piece by piece, wrapped in glitter and fake opportunity. I watched it happen. I felt it happen. And now I'm here to make sure it doesn't happen again. The silence that followed was profound, not a breath or rustle breaking it. Diddy's face was a mask, but his fingers twitched again, a silent admission of the storm Hailey had unleashed. She leaned forward, her eyes burning into the jury. This isn't about one man. It's about the structure he built, a system that silences women with luxury, that gives you champagne when what you need is a way out. Her words were a scalpel, cutting through the myths, exposing the machinery of power that had protected Diddy for decades. As she spoke, Hailey painted a vivid picture of the industry's complicity, the way brands, agents, and executives turned a blind eye to preserve their own access to power. They'd say, "That's just how it is," she recounted. They'd tell you to be grateful, to play the game. But the game was rigged. If you didn't smile, didn't stay, didn't follow the script, you were out. Not just from his events, from everything. She described the loneliness of knowing the truth, but seeing no one acknowledge it, the way it ate at her, masquerading as stress or burnout. "It's not stress," she said, her voice low and fierce. "It's grief. It's grieving the part of you that believed you had control, that you could say no and still have a place in this world." The courtroom was no longer just a room, it was a stage, and Hailey was rewriting the script. She spoke of the nights she lay awake, replaying every moment, questioning every decision. "I told myself, just survive this and you'll be okay," she said. "But that part of your life never really ends. What Diddy did doesn't stay in one night or one house, it lingers, it shapes you. It silences the version of you that used to believe in possibility." Her voice cracked, but she pushed through stronger. "I'm here because silence is a choice and I'm done choosing it. I'm here because the truth doesn't just set you free, it sets others free too." The jury was spellbound, some leaning forward, others wiping tears, as Hailey's words wove a narrative too raw, too real to ignore. She closed with a final, searing truth. Diddy didn't just damage people, he made them complicit. He used their silence as a shield, and when I saw the damage it left behind, I realized the most dangerous thing about him was how easy he made it to look away. The courtroom was a vacuum, the air heavy with the weight of her words. Hailey sat back, her posture steady, her eyes unyielding. She wasn't just a witness, she was a force, a woman reclaiming her voice, her power, her truth. The jury felt it, the judge felt it, and even Diddy, still avoiding her gaze, felt it. This was more than testimony. It was a reckoning, a promise that the silence was over and the industry would never be the same. As the gavel fell, signaling a break, the room remained still, the echoes of Hailey's words lingering like a storm that hadn't yet broken. What comes next could unravel not just one man, but the system that let him thrive, and the world is watching.